I was halfway through the arc of a perfect cannonball, suspended in the air like a middle-aged, slightly out-of-shape Olympian, when I heard the scream. It wasn't a scream of terror or pain or delight. It was a scream of pure, bureaucratic rage. I hit the water, the chaos of the splash momentarily drowning out the world. But as soon as I surfaced, shaking the chlorine from my eyes and gasping for air, I saw her. She was standing on my pool deck, having burst through my side gate like a SWAT team leader in floral print. Her visor was crooked, her knuckles were white as she gripped her phone like a weapon, and she was pointing a finger at me with enough force to crack the sound barrier. "You!" she shrieked, her voice cracking under the weight of her own self-righteousness. "You are trespassing on HOA property. I have called 911, and the police are on their way to arrest you." I stood there in the shallow end, water dripping off my nose, my swim trunks clinging uncomfortably, just staring at her. Trespassing? In the backyard I had bought and paid for? In the pool I spent every Sunday cleaning? The sheer absurdity of it made my brain short-circuit. I looked around, half expecting a hidden camera crew, but there was only the humid stillness of a Tuesday afternoon and this woman, this absolute hurricane of a human being named Brenda, vibrating with fury on my concrete. Here's the plot twist that I didn't even know was coming. Up until that very moment, soaking wet and being filmed by a stranger in orthotic sandals, I didn't even know I was in an HOA. Spoiler alert, I wasn't. But proving that would nearly cost me my sanity, my clean record, and my faith in humanity. Before we dive into the deep end of this suburban nightmare, do me a favor, drop your city and what time it is right now in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from. And if you've ever had a neighbor who made you question your will to live, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because we are in this together. To understand how I ended up facing arrest in my own swimming pool, you have to go back to the beginning. I bought the house about 8 months ago. It was a foreclosure, a bit beat up, but it had good bones, and, most importantly, it sat on a double lot at the very end of a cul-de-sac. The selling point wasn't the kitchen or the master bath, it was the backyard. It was massive, bordered by old, gnarled oak trees that offered actual privacy, and dead center was this pool. It needed work. The liner was peeling and the pump sounded like a dying lawnmower, but I fixed it up. It was my sanctuary. When I bought the place, the paperwork was a mountain. You know how closing is. You sit in a room that smells like stale coffee and toner, and a notary flips pages while saying, "Sign here, initial here, sign here." I remember seeing the words Maple Creek Estates on some of the survey maps, but nobody mentioned fees. Nobody handed me a rulebook. No welcome basket with a list of forbidden paint colors appeared on my porch. I just assumed that because my house was on the outer rim of the development, built years after the main phase, I was in the clear. And for 8 months, I was. It was paradise. Then came Brenda. I had seen her around the neighborhood, usually power walking with a stride that suggested she was late for a meeting to cancel fun. She was always stopping to examine people's mailboxes or measure the length of their grass with her eyes. My neighbor, a retired mechanic named Old Man Miller who lived 2 doors down, had warned me about her while I was washing my truck one day. "Watch out for the commandant," he'd grunted, gesturing with his chin toward a woman inspecting a recycling bin down the street. "Brenda, she thinks she's the sheriff of Maple Creek. She'll write you a ticket for breathing too loud." I laughed it off. "She can't touch me," I said naively. "I'm pretty sure I'm not in the association." Miller just spit on the ground and said, "Doesn't matter what the paper says, son. It matters what Brenda believes." I should have listened. Fast forward to the cannonball incident. The police actually showed up. 2 deputies, looking hot and annoyed, walked into my backyard about 15 minutes after Brenda's 911 call. By then, I had toweling off and put on a t-shirt, but Brenda was still pacing the pool deck, narrating her video for what I assumed was an audience of 0. "There he is, officers," she shouted when they appeared. "The intruder. He's been using the communal aquatics facility for months, stealing water privileges and violating the guest code of conduct." The older deputy, a guy named Officer Davis who looked like he'd been dealing with petty neighbor disputes since the Nixon administration, looked at me, then at the pool, then back at Brenda. "Ma'am," Davis sighed, hitching up his belt. "This is a private residence. This gentleman lives here. He occupies the house," Brenda corrected, spitting the word occupies like it was a slur. But the land? The pool? That belongs to the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association. It was annexed in 2018 under the expansion clause. He is trespassing on community property. Arrest him. My stomach did a little flip. Annexed? 2018? I bought the place in 2023. Was it possible? Could there be some buried clause in the deed that I missed because I was too busy dreaming about barbecue parties? Sir, Officer Davis turned to me. Do you have proof of ownership? Deed? Survey? Yeah, of course, I stammered. It's inside. I ran in, grabbed my file box, and brought out the deed. Davis looked it over. He squinted at the legal description. Then he looked at Brenda. Ma'am, this deed shows he owns the lot, specifically Lot 42 and Lot 43B. It doesn't mention an HOA easement on the pool. The paperwork is pending. Brenda yelled, waving her phone. We voted on it. The board voted to reclaim the unallocated assets on the perimeter lots to increase property value. His failure to recognize our authority does not negate the law. Okay, Davis said, handing me back my papers. Here's the deal. This is a civil matter. I'm not arresting a man for swimming in a pool that is literally 10 feet from his back door. If you have a dispute about property lines, take it to court. But if you call 911 again for a non-emergency, Brenda, I'm going to write you a ticket for misuse of emergency services. Are we clear? Brenda looked like she had just swallowed a lemon whole. She turned her glare on me, her eyes narrowing into little slits of pure malice. You think this is over? She hissed. You think because you tricked these incompetent officers that you've won? I am the head of the compliance committee. I will rain fire on this house. You will pay every dime of back fees, and I will have a padlock on this gate by Monday. She marched out, slamming the gate so hard the latch rattled. Officer Davis looked at me, gave a tired shake of his head, and said, Good luck, buddy. You're going to need it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The seed of doubt Brenda had planted was growing into a tree of anxiety. Pending paperwork, board votes. I spent 4 hours online, digging through county records, trying to find anything about Maple Creek Estates and their boundaries. It was a mess. The development had been built in phases, and the developer had gone bankrupt halfway through Phase 3, which was right where my house sat. There were proposals, draft maps, and liens, but nothing definitive. It was the gray zone, and Brenda knew it. She was weaponizing the confusion. The harassment started the next morning. I woke up to find a bright orange sticker plastered, not taped, plastered with industrial adhesive, right in the center of my front door. Violation notice number 1044, unauthorized use of community asset. Fine, $500 immediate action required. I scraped it off with a razor blade, cursing under my breath. When I went to my mailbox, it was stuffed. Not with mail, but with flyers. She had printed out dozens of copies of a blurry photo of me, shirtless, looking confused by the pool, with the caption, Community Alert, the thief among us. She was distributing them to the neighbors. I walked over to Miller's house. He was on his porch, drinking coffee that smelled like it was 50% whiskey. He saw the flyer in my hand and chuckled. She hit you with the propaganda, huh? He asked. Is she insane? I asked, sitting on his steps. Miller, am I in the HOA? Do you know? Miller took a sip. Well, that's the million-dollar question. The developer, guy named Shady Pete. Not his real name, but it fit. He meant to annex your row. He drew up the papers. But then the recession hit, and he bailed. The HOA thinks they own your strip because it was on the proposed future development map. Brenda has been trying to force that annexation through for 5 years by bullying people into paying dues. Once you pay once, they gotcha. It's an admission of membership. So I'm not in it. Legally? Probably not, Miller said. But Brenda operates on the law of I'm louder than you. She chased the last family out of your house in 18 months. They just got tired of the fines and the noise. I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. I wasn't going to move. I love this house. And I'll be damned if I was going to let a woman in a visor dictate where I could swim. I need to prove it, I said. I need something definitive. Go to the county clerk, Miller advised. Ask for the master deed and the annexation records for Phase 3. And talk to Janet. She's the clerk for District 4. She hates Brenda. Brenda tried to find Janet's mom for having a bird feeder. I took the day off work. I drove down to the county records office, a brutalist concrete building that radiated despair. I waited in line for 45 minutes until I got to the window. The nameplate said Janet. Hi. I said, putting on my most charming, desperate smile. I have a weird question about Maple Creek Estates. Janet didn't even look up from her computer. Let me guess. Brenda is trying to foreclose on your patio? She's trying to arrest me for swimming in my pool. Janet looked up. She had glasses on a chain and eyes that had seen too much bureaucracy. She actually cracked a smile. That woman needs a hobby that doesn't involve litigation. What's the address? I gave it to her. She typed for a minute, frowned, typed some more, and then got up and walked into the back archives. She was gone for 20 minutes. When she came back, she was carrying a large, dusty-bound book and a certified document with a gold seal. Okay, Janet said, opening the book. Here is the original plat map from 2004. Here is Phase 1, Phase 2. Now look at Phase 3. She pointed to a dotted line. My house was outside the dotted line. The developer filed for an extension in 2008, she explained. But he never paid the filing fee. The application lapsed in 2009. See the stamp? Boy, your property is geographically adjacent to the HOA, but legally? It's an island. You are unincorporated. You don't answer to them. You don't owe them. You aren't them. Can I get a copy of that? I asked, feeling like I had just found the Holy Grail. I'll do you one better, Janet said, stamping the certified document. This is an official determination of non-annexation. If she bothers you again, show her this. If she touches your property again, call the sheriff and tell them you want to file charges for harassment and vandalism. And tell Brenda I said hello. I walked out of there feeling 10 feet tall. I had the nuclear codes in a manila envelope. But when I got home, the war had escalated. There was a truck parked in front of my driveway. A tow truck. And standing next to it, directing the driver, was Brenda. She was pointing at my car, which was parked legally on the street in front of my house. It's an abandoned vehicle violation, she was shouting at the driver. It's been stationary for more than 24 hours in a commercial zone. Hey, I yelled, sprinting across the lawn. Don't you touch that truck. Brenda spun around, a smug grin plastered on her face. Ah, the trespasser returns. You have outstanding fines, sir. The association has a lien on your assets. We are seizing the vehicle to cover the debt. The tow truck driver looked confused. Buddy, she showed me paperwork saying this is a private road owned by the HOA. It's a public street. I yelled. And she is lying. I pulled the envelope out of my car. I didn't just hand it to Brenda. I held it up like Moses holding the commandments. Brenda, I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline. You need to listen to me very carefully. I just came from the county clerk. I spoke to Janet. Brenda flinched at the name. I have here a certified, gold-stamped official determination of non-annexation, I announced, loud enough for Miller, who was watching from his porch, to hear. This document proves that Phase 3 failed. My house, my land, my pool, and this street are not in Maple Creek Estates. You have no authority here. You are harassing a private citizen. I handed the paper to the tow truck driver. He read it, looked at the seal, looked at Brenda, and laughed. A deep, belly laugh. Lady, the driver said, unhooking the chain from my bumper. You tried to get me to tow a car off a public municipal road? You know that's auto theft, right? I could have you arrested. Brenda turned pale. That document is a forgery. He printed it. It has the county seal, lady, the driver said, hopping into his cab. Don't call me again. He drove off, leaving a cloud of diesel fumes. Brenda stood there, trembling. She looked at the paper in my hand. Let me see that. Nope, I said. You can see it in court. Court? She squeaked. Yeah, I said. Because I'm not just defending myself anymore. I'm going on offense. I didn't stop there. I knew Brenda. I knew she would go home, rationalize this, and come back with a new angle. She would claim the county was wrong. She would claim adverse possession. I needed to cut off the head of the snake. I went inside and scanned the document. Then, I drafted an email. Not to Brenda, but to the actual HOA board. See, I found out Brenda wasn't the president. She was the compliance chair. The president was a guy named Dave who lived 4 blocks away and mostly just wanted the neighborhood to be quiet. I attached the document. I attached the photos of the vandalism on my door. I attached the video of her screaming at the police. And I wrote, Dear Board, attached is legal proof that my property is not in your jurisdiction. Brenda has harassed me, vandalized my home, attempted to steal my car, and filed false police reports. If she is not removed from her position and if I do not receive a formal written apology stating I am not a member, I will file a lawsuit against the HOA for harassment, emotional distress, and attempted grand theft auto. I will bankrupt this association. You have 24 hours. I hit send. Then, I printed out 50 copies of the non-annexation letter. I waited until 2 a.m. I put on a hoodie, and I walked the neighborhood. I put a copy in every single mailbox on my street. The street Brenda claimed was HOA property. The next morning, the neighborhood exploded. It turns out, I wasn't the only one. There were 8 other houses on my street that were part of the Void Phase 3. Brenda had been collecting dues from them for a decade. Thousands of dollars. Illegal fines. Assessments for a pool they weren't allowed to use. When the neighbors woke up and read that letter, the group chat, which I wasn't in, but Miller showed me later, went nuclear. People realized they had been scammed. They realized they had been bullied into paying a club they didn't belong to. At 10 a.m., there was a knock on my door. It was Dave, the HOA president. He looked like he hadn't slept. He was holding a bottle of expensive scotch and a letter. "Can I come in?" he asked. We sat at my kitchen table. Dave poured 2 glasses. "I didn't know," Dave said, his head in his hands. "I swear to God. Brenda handles the maps. She told us Phase 3 was finalized years ago. We let her run it because nobody else wanted the job. She tried to have me arrested, Dave," I said. "She tried to steal my truck." "I know," Dave said. "We had an emergency meeting this morning via Zoom. Brenda is out. Fired. Banned from the committee. And we're going to have to refund the dues to everyone on this street. It's going to drain the reserve fund. The pool might have to close for the summer." "That sounds like a you problem," I said, taking a sip of the scotch. "It is," Dave nodded. "Here is your formal apology. And a check for the damage to your door." But the real climax wasn't the check. It was the next Tuesday. Brenda, despite being fired, couldn't let it go. She showed up at the monthly HOA meeting, which was held at the community center. I went just to watch. Miller came with me. We brought popcorn. Literally. The room was packed. People who never came to meetings were there. The 8 families from my street were in the front row, holding their refund demands. Brenda walked in like she owned the place, marching up to the podium. "I am being silenced," she shouted into the microphone. "These documents are fraudulent. This is a conspiracy to destroy our property values. If we let these people leave, the neighborhood falls apart." Dave stood up. "Brenda, sit down. You aren't on the board." "I am the board," she screamed, creating a sound clip that would circulate on the neighborhood Facebook page for years. Then, the doors opened. It wasn't the police this time. It was a process server, a young guy in a hoodie. He walked right up to the podium, right up to Brenda. "Brenda Higgins?" he asked. "What is this?" she snapped. "You're being served," he said, handing her a thick stack of papers. "Class action lawsuit from the residents of Phase 3 for fraud, extortion, and harassment. And a personal restraining order from Mr. Mark Reynolds." He pointed at me in the back row. Brenda looked at the papers. She looked at the crowd. She looked at me. I raised a single kernel of popcorn in a toast and ate it. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just deflated. It was like watching a balloon lose its air. She dropped the papers, stepped off the podium, and walked out the side door into the rainy night. We never saw her at a meeting again. The fallout was massive. The HOA had to settle. They refunded nearly $40,000 to the neighbors on my street. Brenda put her house on the market 3 months later. The listing description said, "Great community, motivated seller." I heard she moved to a condo in Florida. God help that condo board. But the best part? The best part was the following Saturday. It was hot. A scorcher. I invited Miller over. I invited the 8 families from my street who had just gotten their refund checks. We had a pool party. We grilled steaks. We blasted classic rock. We splashed. We made noise. And right at the peak of the party, I walked out to the edge of my driveway, right where the HOA jurisdiction supposedly started. I hammered a sign into the ground. A nice, wooden sign I had carved myself. It read, "The Unincorporated Republic of Lot 42. No trespassing. No HOAS. No Brendas." Miller walked up, handed me a cold beer, and looked at the sign. "You know," Miller said, looking at the kids splashing in the pool. My private, non-communal pool. "I think she did you a favor." "How's that?" I asked. "She brought the neighborhood together," he laughed. "Nothing unites people like a common enemy and a big fat refund check." I looked at my house, safe and sound. I looked at the street, free of Brenda's patrols. And I realized he was right. I had fought the law, and for once, the law won. But mostly, I won. So, here's my question to you guys. Was I too harsh? Should I have just let it slide and paid the fines to keep the peace? Or did Brenda get exactly what she deserved? I mean, she lost her power, her reputation, and her house because she couldn't handle a cannonball. Let me know in the comments below. And seriously, if you haven't checked your deed recently, go do it. You might be paying for a club you aren't even in. Thanks for listening, guys. Stay safe, stay petty, and keep your gates locked. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.